Hello, everyone. For the benefit of those who missed it last time, let me begin by introducing myself. My name is Sagar. Since the past 5 years, I've been building some really cool stuff using the Frappe framework. I've been in varied roles, ranging from asking stupid questions on the forum to even maintaining Frappe and Yarp Next. But today, I want to talk about something really important. I want to talk about security. Don't get pawned. For those who are wondering, owned spelled incorrectly is the internet slang for hacked. Don't get hacked. That sounds really ominous, doesn't it? Yes, I drew inspiration from this quote by Dan Farmer, which says, people don't want to talk about death, just like they don't want to talk about computer security. Maybe I should have named my workstation Fear, because people are so motivated by fear. On a serious note, though, I really hope that this talk serves as a call to action more than anything else. Part of my role in the Frappe security team is proactively analyzing code to identify and fix security issues. In the last 9 months alone, I've identified and helped fix more than 50 security issues, some of which were critical. While fixing these issues promptly is great, how can we stop them from arising in the first place? As the author of Postfix said, and I'm paraphrasing here, we need to write software that works as intended. Now, I want to stress on as intended here because most security issues arise when an intruder figures out how to make a piece of code do something that wasn't originally intended. Through some examples, I'll now be attempting to demonstrate how this plays out. Though these examples may seem harmless, they demonstrate the same patterns that we have observed when identifying critical issues. Let's take a look at this piece of code. It's a very simple function called markNotificationRead, which takes a notification as a parameter and sets it as read using frappe.db.setValue. Fairly simple. So when we call it by passing the name of the notification, it works as intended. But if you remember, frappe.db.setValue accepts a dictionary of filters as well. So what do you think will happen when we, instead of passing the name of the notification as is intended, what happens when we pass a dictionary of filters instead? Well, every notification in the database will get marked as read, or at least those that are part of the filters. In this case, every notification which has a name will get marked as read. Now that's not intended behavior. So how do we fix this? By checking the types of each parameter that we pass to the whitelisted function. As you can see in this corrected code over here, we are calling isInstance to check that the notification must be a string. Starting version 14, this will become a lot more easier because you will be able to validate the types of a parameter by simply passing type hints in the function definition. This here is a nice example of a type hint. And to read more about type hints, you can visit the Python documentation website. Okay, let's take a look at another example now. This is a fairly intuitive piece of code called get.js. It takes the name of a JS file name as parameter and returns its contents. So when you pass the name of a JS file name to it as a GET request, it works as intended. It opens that file, reads its contents, and sends them back to you. And that is intended behavior, nothing special there. But what happens if you pass the relative path of a CSS file? Or what happens if you pass the relative path of a very secret backup file? You don't want the contents of these files to be accessible from a whitelisted method. To fix this, we simply need to validate the JS file name parameter. And the way we do that is by checking two things. One, that the separator, which is usually /, is not present in the JS file name, and that JS file name must end with .js. This is just an example, but this is how a vast majority of the security exploits work, by making use of the lack of validation. So it is really essential to sufficiently validate every parameter that you pass and accept in a whitelisted function. When dealing with files specifically, we're dealing with attached files most of the time. So in such cases, it is much better to use the file doc types built-in methods like get content, for example. On to the next one. This function called update customer is designed to update the email and phone number of a customer and return the customer's document. It checks the type of the customer parameter, so that's good. And then it updates the customer and returns either the customer's document or any error that is encountered. Fairly straightforward. Now let's assume that an intruder calling this function, obviously they do not have any permission to read or write a customer. So when they try to call this API with an invalid customer name, they will get a neat response with the error traceback saying that the customer name is invalid. But what happens if they call this function with a valid customer name? They still don't have any permissions for customer, so a permission error will be thrown when customer.save is called. But by then, the customer variable already has the value of the customer document. And so that's what gets returned, thereby exposing the whole customer document to an unauthorized party. How do we fix this? Well, we fix this easily by choosing different names for the parameter. We choose customer name for the parameter and customer for the variable holding the document. What did we learn? We should always double check what values we return, and we should not give away excessive information when handling exceptions. Now let's move on to some essential code practices. Many of us don't know the fact that frappe.getDoc doesn't actually check permissions. Whenever you implement a getter or a setter, you must check permissions explicitly using frappe.hasPermission or doc.hasPermission, as the case may be. The notable exception to this is when you're calling save or submit, since these functions already check for permissions. Then there are those cases where you need to check if the user has a specific rule. This can be done using the frappe.only for function. We're making this even simpler in v14 by introducing a roles parameter in frappe.whitelist itself. They should be used only for system manager, however, since all other roles can be edited or deleted or modified in some way. In the rare case that you must ignore permissions, it is imperative that you specify why using a comment. Curb your whitelisting. These are some of the questions that you should really ask yourself when writing a whitelisted function. Do I need to write this? A normal web application may contain 100 or so API endpoints. Frappe and ERPNext combined contain about 2,000. It is probable that one of these can serve your purpose. So you need to ask yourself this question. Secondly, does it need to be whitelisted? This needs to be mentioned surprisingly because some security issues have been encountered from whitelisted methods that aren't actually being accessed from the front end at all. Does it really need guest access? What HTTP methods should be permitted? By asking these questions, we are simply attempting to be as restrictive as possible without breaking functionality. It is important to remember that every whitelisted method is basically an API endpoint. While writing it, you need to imagine that 100 skilled hackers will put their entire efforts trying to find an exploit in your code. Remember the Peter Parker principle: with great power comes great responsibility. So far, we have discussed only a subset of ways in which the security issues arise. For further information, please visit the Frappe Framework's GitHub page and read the contribution guidelines. But some of you are thinking, I'm not a developer, what can I do about it? Don't worry, I've got you covered. We're always pushing security fixes, and the only way to take benefit of that is by keeping your installations up to date. Secondly, if you don't really need it, disable signup from website settings. This helps reduce exposure to a majority of whitelisted methods. Incentivizing core contributions is a must. I can't stress this enough. This brings your code to the secure scrutiny of the Frappe security team. And in general, it ensures better code quality and stability. Enforcing two-factor authentications, keeping your password secure, not easy to guess. These are self-explanatory things that everyone must do. None of these should ideally be optional. I would like to end this by saying, in computer programming, there is always a trade-off that happens between writing good code and writing it quickly. Always demand good code from your developers. That way, you will have less chances of encountering into a security issue later on. With that, now I'd like to hand over to my friend Chadrak to talk a bit about the steps being taken by Frappe for improved security. Thanks, everyone.
Hi, everyone. Is my voice audible?
Yes.
Yeah. So hi, everyone. I'm Chadrak Grupner. I work as a DevOps engineer at Frappe. So I'm sure at this point, everybody must be thinking that since we have these many issues, what is Frappe doing at the security level, and what are the steps taken by Frappe to make your business more secure? So I'd like to first start off all with this famous quote from Andrew Hunt. He says, "You can't write perfect software, but because perfect software doesn't exist, but we can strive it to make it perfect." And that's how we do it in Frappe security team. So in Frappe, we have our own security team, which comprises of our lead maintainers. We find proactively bugs and try to fix it on priority. Few of our findings include remote code execution and directory traversals, which we have fixed already. Other than finding bugs, we also review user accessible code at the PR level. And we try to impart all our learnings from finding these bugs with the better guidelines and preventive measures. But at this point, how you can help us make Frappe and ERP Next more secure and bug-free. We have this bug bounty program. So let me give a brief about what is bug bounty program. It's a platform for the community members and all the researchers out there who can contribute by if they find a bug. What they have to just do is go to erpnext.com/security and read the guidelines and instructions and fill the forms with all the vulnerabilities they have found with the complete description and details. I'd like to have a walkthrough of the entire process and how we handle your reports. First of all, whenever you fill the form, we have this screen. We have this screen in front of us where I can see all the details have been submitted by you. It includes your name, your contact details, the vulnerability type you have found, the application where it exists, the affected version, and the severity of the vulnerability. So once we have validated, we start working on the fix. And it works as like by raising a PR on GitHub. So the PR itself goes through several steps. It is thoroughly reviewed and tested by our security engineers at Frappe, and before it gets finally merged, and it is released immediately in the next cycle. Also, it is thoroughly tested from the client side before it is released. Also, in the bug bounty program, we also pay our researchers with the bounty according to the severity and the application, or as the policy says. So the payment is initiated simultaneously when the report is validated, and it has been closed once the payment is done. But this is all talks. So let me show you some numbers with you. In just last 1 year, we were able to close, with the help of our security team and the researchers through the bug bounty program, more than 120 security issues were closed, and we paid around more than $5,000 via bug bounty program to our researchers. But there's one more thing we have to share. Frappe is already in the process of becoming an CNA. CNA is CV Numbering Authority. For those who are not aware of what is CVE, CVE is an ID which has been assigned to every vulnerability which you found in an application, and every CV is been assigned not by us, but it is assigned by a international body, which is called a CV body. Since it is an international body, it takes a lot of time for applying for an CV for a vulnerability, and sometimes it takes to a month or two. But by becoming in CNA, we'll be able to store bundles of CV ID in advance, and we'll be able to assign CV IDs immediately after the issue has been fixed, and we can deploy when we can publish it and disclose it to our stakeholders and our customers and to the community members as soon as we can. All the previously published CV IDs are already available on our ERP Next website. You can find it on erpnext.com/security/references. Lastly, I just like to conclude our presentation by saying, let's make ERP Next more secure than ever before. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. We will take questions now.
Thank you, guys. You definitely helped us understand what all steps are necessary to keep ERP Next installation safe from intruders. Please feel free to ask any questions to our speakers related to the same topic.